Hope everybody is doing well. Um, a couple of things that I want to do tonight. I'm just going to walk you through case study number 2, primarily focusing on if you guys have any questions or concerns or anything like that. Then we'll talk just a minute about case study number 3, which is your final exam. And then specifically tonight, I want to get into and start talking about effective strategies and practices for urban schools. We've done a lot of background and context building, in terms of the struggles and inequalities that exist in many of our urban schools and communities. But tonight, let's start talking more about the solution as opposed to just the problem. So let's look first. Let me go to Moodle here real quick, if you guys don't mind. Let me do my share screen. It's a little trickier than normal because I am on my laptop and not my regular computer. Okay, so here we go. So as you know, and I'm sorry guys, I'm a little bit behind on grading, so I hope to kind of get through case study number 1 today and tomorrow. So you should definitely have your grades before the weekend. But let's look at, I'm going to go back to week 4, and let's look at, for just a minute, case study number 2, or the midterm exam, same thing. Okay, so if you remember, back in case study 1, you had some worksheets and things like that that you were going to do. So you have, again, for case study number 2, some worksheets. So let me get these open. So, maybe. Okay, there it goes. All right, so the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to create that vision and mission for your school. And then from that vision and mission, you're going to develop 3 goals for either your school, your system, or your community, whichever one that you're focusing on. And honestly, you can use those SMART goals that you developed in case study 1. You can just move them right on in here. So if you're in an existing school or school system or in a community that has a vision statement and a mission statement, you are welcome to use those. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. But the idea is, what's our vision, what's our mission, and then you should have at least 3 goals that you have developed or used that can go here. Now, goals are a little bit broader, and so from each one of those 3 goals, you're going to develop 3 objectives. So objectives are much more specific. So if you're focusing on, let's say, one of your goals is to improve student achievement in grade 3 math by 10% within 6 months, with at least 90% of students mastering the objectives, then you could put, or mastering the content, then you could list 3 very specific goals here. Or objectives, excuse me, I'm sorry, I used the wrong term. So those objectives may be something like that you're going to create pre-assessments and post-assessments that are going to be used at the beginning and at the end of each lesson. A second objective might be that you're going to use, let's see, reasoning minds maybe as a math program. Anything like that will be fine for your objectives. Okay, moving on. Part 3, this is what we talked about last time. This is sort of your 1-minute elevator speech. So what do you want people to know about your urban school or your urban system or the community? And it's just kind of the highlights that, this is who we are, here's what we're about, here's what we're hoping to accomplish, this is what we've done that's worked really well, these are some of our challenges that we still need, and then these are some of our vision and mission. So anything like that is fine. So I gave you a few guiding questions just to kind of help you, but again, it's that 1-minute sort of elevator speech that capsulizes and summarizes what your school system or community is all about. Okay. Then in part 4, this is your desired outcome. So I want you to think in these terms. So what would a successful graduate of your school be able to do or know? You could also do it by grade level. You could do it by community. So I gave you an example. So for example, by the end of first grade, students will be able to, and then you could just give me a bulleted list of at least 5 skills or attributes. So for example, by the end of first grade, students will be able to successfully read on grade level as assessed by the state assessment. The second one might be that students will be able to add, subtract, multiple digit numbers, etc. So at least 5 skills, attributes, knowledge, whatever that you think students should be able to accomplish within this context. Okay. The pull-through offer, like I said, it's sort of part of a market. It is part of a marketing plan, and so how will you get your customers to come through your doors? So how are you going to get people hooked into supporting your school? So this might be something like we're going to create a Facebook page. We're going to hold community meetings at all of the apartment complexes. It can be anything that you think would be beneficial because you know your community much better than I do. You should list 3 to 5 strategies, methods, or tools that you would use to help get the word out about your community. Okay. Then once you're done, you'll do just like you did in case study number 1. You'll pull up that action plan template and you're going to copy and paste this information into the action plan because your final exam is to not only complete case study number 3, but to also submit that final action plan that should have everything filled in by that time. Okay, so let me stop sharing so I can see you guys again. Questions, comments, and concerns. And you didn't see anything that I just showed you, did you? I am so sorry, guys. It's pretty, I mean, it's all there in Moodle, so I would guess, since it's, you know, been assigned and everything last week, most of you guys have seen it, so I'm not too terribly concerned about that part. But what questions do y'all have about case study 2? And Stacey wants to know if I looked at part 1. I've looked at a few of them. Like I said, I'm a little bit behind on grading, so I haven't looked at all of them. But the ones that I've seen look really strong. So I think you guys are going to do much better than you probably realize. I think I told a student not too long ago, quit overthinking this and making it harder and more complex than it needs to be. It's really, the whole idea is there's not necessarily right or wrong answers. It's really more about applying what you're learning and making sense of all of this information so that you can walk away with a product that can be actually used and implemented on down the line. Okay. Any questions, guys, about case study 2?
I had a really hard time with that because it was like we were setting these goals of things we wanted to accomplish, but then in reality, this is not the year.
Yeah. No, I get that. This is a very unusual year, as I have a granddaughter today who they can't decide if she has COVID or if she has pneumonia, you know, neither of which are good. And so, yeah, this is a crazy year, guys, in every imaginable way. But like I said, this may not be something that you can implement this year, but it might be something that you can pull pieces from. It might be something you can do next year on down the road. But the whole idea is to think outside the box and use what you've been learning and reading about and we've been talking about so that you can really have a very strong understanding of sort of the state of our urban schools and communities and what can be done to improve them. Okay. All right, I'm going to try to show you. Oh, thank you guys for those of you that are chiming in about my granddaughter. We should know for sure tomorrow. Bless her heart. Okay, so let me try to see if I can actually share with you again hang on one second, I got to get back over here. Case study number 3. Sorry, give me one second. Okay, so I'm going to try one more time to share with you guys. So I'm going to share screen and we're going to try to see this. Share. Okay, so hopefully you guys are seeing this. Can somebody give me kind of a heads up or not if you're seeing it or not? Allegra, can you see my screen?
Yeah, so we can see Myrtle, so it's the big five over there.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Lily. I see your thumbs up too. Okay, so your final exam is the first part. Case study number 3 is due on the 17th of October. And then the final exam is not actually due till the end of class. So let me pull this up here, which I guess is the same date. Okay, so case study number 3, you've got several documents that you're going to be completing. So you're going to complete not only the case study number 3 opportunity, qualification, and process criteria worksheet, the project plan, and then your worksheet on process. You're going to take all of that and load it into the action plan template, just like you did for case study number 1 and case study number 2, and hopefully turn those in. All together. So you're going to be submitting for your final exam in week 7. There will be 4 pieces. So let me see if I can pull this up. Hang on, I'm going to stop sharing for a second and try to share again, and hopefully you can actually see it this time. Okay, there we go. All right. So let me click that on real quick. All right. So the first part of this is called the opportunity, qualification, and process criteria. So this is whether you determine, this is how you determine, whether a prospect or stakeholder has a specific need or challenge that you can satisfy so that that gets them hooked into what you're doing. So for example, my prospecting stakeholder group that I want to focus on are the pastors and religious leaders in the community. I know that in many of the urban communities that I serve, these were highly respected individuals. They had a lot of not only respect from the community, but their voice really mattered. So it was really important to get them kind of involved in our school and on my side kind of thing. So, and I know, the whole thing about, religion in schools and blah, blah, blah. That wasn't the point. These were individuals, like I said, who were highly respected, and we found ways to really benefit each other without having to bring in the religious aspect of that. So one of the things that we want to have was we wanted to have an after-school program that was faith-based for some of our students who wanted to participate in that. But we also had an after-school program too, that we had one for STEM, we had one for, gosh, I'm trying to remember, intramural sports, we had gardening, we had all kinds of things. And the pastors kind of helped us to organize that. They put out the call for volunteers to lead this. So it really was an awesome sort of thing. So my prospecting stakeholder, what they needed from me is they wanted to be able to do more to support the entire community. And I'm sure and hope in doing so, they were hoping to get more people in church and things like that. But the whole idea was to create these community opportunities. So what was the need or challenge? We wanted to do more to support the youth in our community. So it actually extended beyond the school. So you're going to list 5 groups that you want to get involved. So it could be pastors, it could be community leaders, it can be parents, it can be business owners, it could be, oh gosh, I don't know, there's really anything. It could be police officers, it could be firefighters, it could be, like I said, any group that you feel like would benefit your school. You have to find a way to hook them into this. So for example, we had a great partnership with the police department, and they did things like police explorers. They did, I can't remember this other program. It was really awesome that they did, where they took the kids like horseback riding and stuff like that. And the way that we hooked them was by getting youth involved early with the police department. The hope was that it would reduce, criminal activity, give students something to do that was positive, etc. So anything here that you think is applicable is fine, okay? So that's that particular worksheet. So let me close that out, okay? And let me go back. Sorry guys, I hate that I haven't having to keep going back and forth. Let's go ahead and look at the project plan. Let me get that open, and then I will share that with you as well. So bear with me 1 second here. And I'm going to share my screen, which is this one, project plan. Share. Okay, so in the project plan, you're basically thinking about what resources do you need. They can be budgetary, they can be individuals or people, they can be materials and supplies, they could be anything. So, you know, one of your resources might be that you want to work with, like I said, the local pastors. So what do I want them to do? I want them to help me set up. So their role would be to set up an after-school program. How much time do I think that's going to take? And it's just an estimation. So I'm going to list from that list of the 5 stakeholders that you created in the previous worksheet, you're going to choose 3. Okay, so out of the 5, just choose 3. List those here. Tell us what their role is going to be. So what are they helping you to do, or what is their particular job, I guess, in terms of this, and how much time do you think it'll entail. Then you're going to create a budget. So this can include things like, oh gosh, it could be, for example, we did a safety fair in partnership with the police department. So, you know, basically they funded all that. But I provided the space, we provided some snacks. It just depends. Another thing we did was if you guys have ever heard of the program Shattered Dreams, which is actually promoted by mothers who are against destructive decisions, or they used to be called against drunk driving. And so it was a huge community event. It involved the police department, the fire department, the hospital, a local funeral home. Oh my gosh, I can't even begin to tell you how many different organizations participated in this. So this is where you would list your budget items. And then you're also going to be looking at, hang on, I gotta find my little scroll bar here. Where'd it go? Try to do this, sorry guys. Okay, so what you're going to do is from those resources, you're going to talk specifically about like what I just said. So that part you've already done in the chart. You're going to do your budget. Then you're going to describe that, take one of those specific resources and get a little bit more detail into them. So for example, it's probably easier if I just show you the example. Hang on, sorry, oops, too far. Okay, so I'm going to use, so I'm looking at, one of my resources was I wanted some tutors to come in. And I needed those tutors to use really great educational practices to help and support our students. So I went to the Best Practices Clearinghouse. It's actually on the U.S. Department of Ed website. And I started looking for some tutoring strategies that could be used. So we incorporated those strategies not only into our programs, but also pulled some for lesson planning and daily teaching. I'm going to use my Title I budget to purchase the necessary instructional materials. If you're not familiar with how funding goes to schools, that is absolutely fine. You can just say school budget, or you can say donations, or whatever. And so then I'm going to be specific. So you see, here's my resource that I'm using. Here's my budget. Here's my definition and description of those things that we're going to use. So we taught the tutors how to use the daily demonstration of learning and the model of I do, we do, you do. So the tutor would show the student how to do it, then they do some of that together, and then the student would do it. So that's my description. Then my metrics is, and I'm going to use an exit ticket every day with this, you know, have the tutors do this so that we can tell if the students are mastering those daily objectives. So here's your worksheet. So you're going to take one of those resources. You're going to list that resource again from the chart. Tell me your budget, what do you need and how are you going to pay for it. Define that particular resource for me. So if it's going to be to engage local pastors, you can say that you're going to engage 3 local pastors in creating after-school activities, for example. How are you going to know if that's successful? Well, maybe you're just going to monitor and chart attendance in the after-school activities. Then you're going to do the same thing for your second resource. And the same thing for your third resource. Okay? Kind of makes sense? And then let me go to the last part of this. So again, guys, bear with me for 1 second while I get to this. And let's talk about the process worksheet. So I need to come over here. Sorry, guys, I talk to myself a lot when I'm doing stuff. So let me share this last one with you. Okay. So obviously, if you're going to be doing all of these things, you have to have professional development, for example. So one of the things that I felt was important in my overall action plan was to do some professional development to really help teachers know how to build effectively relationships with their students. So one of the programs, and again, guys, you don't have to know program names or whatever. You can make it up as far as I'm concerned, or you can just do a Google search. So one of the things that I wanted my teachers to go through is called Capturing Kids' Hearts. It's an online course that can be delivered via Moodle. And again, I'm just making up dates. So we were going to start these sessions on October 1st. They were going to go through October 31st. The content is available 24/7. The program costs $75 per person. So my total expenditure, because I was going to put 20 teachers through it, was $1,500. Okay. So again, you're just going to tell me what is your professional development that's going to support your plan. Tell me when and how it's going to be delivered. So it could be you're going to use a professional development day. It can be online. It can be a workbook. It can be a book study. Anything you want to do is fine. And just kind of follow my example. So I'm going to ask you to list 5 professional development activities. Okay? You're going to do. One of them can be coaching. So, maybe you're going to pair teachers up and they're going to do some peer coaching of each other. Like I said, it's wide open. No right or wrong answer, just things that you think are going to be supportive in helping you to achieve your goals. And you're also going to do what's called a prospecting mechanism. So again, you're taking that idea from before, who is not involved in your school that you want to get involved into your school, and you're just going to tell me how you're going to hook them at first. So it's just a simple list. So my first stakeholder group, going back to what we talked about in the previous worksheet, are going to be pastors and religious leaders in my community. How am I going to get them hooked? Well, I'm going to just do a little community coffee. And I'm going to invite them to come. We're just going to maybe have some donuts and some coffee. I'm going to talk a little bit about the school and what our needs are. I may have some of the students come and talk. And then we're just going to go from there. So my goal is get them involved, hook them in the school by telling them a little bit about what we need. And I'm even going to ask if any of them would be willing to serve on our campus community advisory board. Because ultimately that's what I need. So I'm going to list my stakeholders here, and then I'm going to take my prospecting tools. So my first group, like I said, let's say is pastors. So then I'd list my prospecting tool here, which is community coffee. My second group maybe is I'm going to involve the police officers who work in my community. How am I going to get them involved? I'm going to, I don't know, invite them to, I don't know, a luncheon. Could do that. Or I'm going to send them invitations. Or I'm going to show up at the police station with some homemade cookies and stuff like that, with a flyer or maybe invitations to invite them to come to something at school. It can be anything you want, guys. It does, like I said, you could send them an email. You could do community letters. You could post something in the newspaper. Not that anybody reads the newspaper anymore, but that's the basically idea. So for whatever events that you're going to be doing, you need to think about it ahead of time. So I need to send maybe some handwritten invitations to the community. So for each one of those events that I'm going to do, I'm going to just, like I said, do, how am I going to make sure that this happens? Okay. So you're just kind of thinking it through. Then after the event, What am I going to do? Well, I may send them some thank you notes and, you know, include in there the advisory board meetings and a memo asking them to add these to their calendar. Okay. So pretty simple. What do you need to do? Whatever, take your event or your activity. What do I need to do to get ready for it and get people there? And then what do I need to do afterwards to make sure I keep people engaged and involved? Okay. Then same thing, you'll take all of that and you will post that into your action plan for case study number 3. Okay. Questions? And like I said, don't make it overly hard. There are no right or wrong answers, just what you think is going to work best to get people involved. You know, I think I shared with you guys one time that we really wanted to get more of our parents feeling comfortable coming to the school. So we just had a big, huge school-wide potluck dinner. You know, surprised I didn't get in trouble with the health department, but thankfully it went off without them knowing, so we were all good. You know, as an elementary principal, we hosted a huge Cinco de Mayo festival, and we went out into the community. We got everything donated, so it was completely free. And we, you know, we had a very large Hispanic population, and we asked everybody to dress up in their, you know, their beautiful Cinco de Mayo dresses and outfits and things like that. This is really fun and cool. So like I said, there can be a million different ways to get people hooked. You know, I'm just giving you some of the things that I had used in the past. Okay. Questions? Clearly I have the rock stars of the class with me tonight, so you guys don't have questions. But if you do, you know, you can always email me and we'll chat from there or set up a Zoom meeting. All good before I move on? Okay, awesome. You guys, like I said, you're the rock star group, so we're in good shape. Okay, so let's kind of talk tonight about our PowerPoint presentation, which I hope I can share with you again. Here we go. Sorry, there we go. Okay, so like I said at the outset, at the beginning of classes, tonight I really want to talk to you about, we've talked a lot about what are the problems. We know there's a ton of issues in the urban schools. And I found an article that I was reading the other night. Hang on. I have this new little rescue dog. He's like just kind of really high maintenance sometimes. So sorry, I've got to let him come over here by me so he'll quit freaking out. Okay, so anyway, so I was reading this article the other day that had been written by Ron Edmonds, and I was really struck by how everything he was saying was so applicable in today's schools. And I knew it was an older article, but I didn't realize how old until I looked up the date. It was written in 1978. And he was talking about how we were failing to educate our urban students. And he called them inner city students, or our students from poverty. And I just sat there and I thought, you know, gosh, how sad is this? You know, this was written in 1978. I was a whopping, how old was I in 1978? I was a whopping 15 years old, and we were still experiencing the same problems. And his point was that we have everything we need to successfully educate every single student. We just don't have the will and the desire to do it. And I think that was such a profound statement for then. It's also a very profound statement in 2020. You know, we've tried all kinds of things that haven't worked. But we do know there are things, so tons of research that shows this, that we can implement. So tonight, the focus is on effectiveness. So let's talk about for a second here, what are the core principles or the core elements that have to be in place for a school to be effective in the urban environment? Well, first and foremost, it has to have strong leaders and leadership. And I'm not talking about just leadership from the principal or the campus administration. It's leadership at all levels. So you have to have strong principals and campus leaders. You have to have strong community leaders. You have to have strong business leaders. You have to have strong teacher leaders. You have to have strong staff leaders. And even in elementary, middle, and high school, You need strong leadership from your students. And a lot of times we forget about how critical they are to the success or failure of our school. Secondly, we have to have a climate of high expectations for learning. Oftentimes, you will see well-intentioned teachers go into urban schools and their mentality is that they're going to save all of these children. These poor children need me. When in reality, what they should be walking in and saying is, these urban students are no different than any other student, from the most affluent family to the middle class family, etc. The difference is I need to teach them from where they are, but I have to have the same expectation for their success as I would for students in the most elite private school. We can't feel sorry for students. We need to support and equip them with everything that we possibly can so that they can achieve and be successful. And there's schools throughout this country that have shown that when you do that, we can in fact be successful. The other thing we have to remember is equity. So, one of my favorite quotes is, that equal is not fair and fair is not equal. So while those very affluent students in those elite private schools get the best of everything, that's not equitable with what our urban students oftentimes get. So what does it mean in this context when I'm talking about equity? Equity means that there is fairness in the distribution of the primary, and it's not God's, it's goods and services that characterize our social order. So for example, if you can walk into school A and they have 50 books in the library for every student, you should be able to walk into our urban or inner city schools and have that same 50 books per student. Now granted, in that more affluent school, those books may have been bought and provided by parents and donations, etc., but that doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how you get the resources. What matters is that the resources are equitable between schools. That's how we achieve true equity throughout not only our schools and our communities, but also socially. And we all know that that is a big problem. We also have to be thinking about efficacy. So what I mean is that there has to be a minimum level of goods and services for everybody. Everybody's entitled to this minimum level. So again, if the standard is going to be, and this happens a lot of times in budgeting. So if school A already has 50 books per student in the library, but school B only has 30 books in the library for every student, then that may mean in budgeting that school A doesn't get any additional money to buy library books. School B gets the resources and the funding is targeted to them so we can bring them up to that standard of 50 books per child. So hopefully that kind of makes sense to you. Like I said, it's not that we're taking away from one, we're just trying to build the other up to that same level. So in terms of education, I think it's probably a universal understanding that we have really failed to educate the children of the poor. And this crosses racial as well as ethnic lines. Poor children tend to do much less in terms of educational opportunities, educational achievement, those kind of things, than their more affluent peers. So if we want there to be true equity and efficacy in terms of how we educate our poorest children, we have to make sure that there is early acquisition of the basic skills that students need to be able to access the next level of schooling. So if within a school district or a town or a city or a parish or a county or whatever, the majority of students are coming into, let's say, kindergarten, knowing how to write their name, do the alphabet, count to, 25, and they know all of their colors and shapes. That should be the expectation for every student, regardless of their background and whether they're coming from an affluent or a poor family. So several things have been tried over the years. So pre-K, universal pre-K is one strategy. Head Start is certainly another. But one of the things that they're finding is the more we are investing in early childhood opportunities, starting at birth in our poorest communities, the better we are able to bring students into their first formal schooling experience, which is generally going to be kindergarten for most kids. The more prepared they are, the better they're going to do throughout their entire academic career. But if you bring students to kindergarten and they've never held a pencil, they don't know how to cut, they don't have those basic early childhood skills, that creates a deficit that literally extends all the way through their schooling experiences, all the way through high school. So it's really critical that we focus on those early acquisition of skills. We also need to make sure that students do not leave one grade level until they are ready for the next grade level. And quite frankly, attaining those skills is really more a matter of politics than it is social science. So what do I mean by that? A lot of people are like, well, if they don't master it, retain them. We all know retention does not work. Now, we may need to extend the school year, the school day. We may need to provide intensive, learning opportunities for students, et cetera. But oftentimes the politics of school districts, cities, towns, et cetera, get in the way of what we know needs to happen to help our students be successful. So if we think about it from a social science perspective, those are the things that people play with all the time. So what do I mean by that? So for example, probably in the early 2000s, Bill Gates got this brilliant idea, and I'm not putting down Bill Gates. If you're like his biggest fan, I hope I don't offend you. But he got this idea that if we invested all kinds of money into schools, then we could affect a change. And the idea behind investing all this money was to change the structures of schools. So we did things like, and I actually wrote and was awarded as a principal one of these multi-million-dollar grants to create smaller learning communities. So we created smaller learning communities. We put into place teaming for ninth graders. We did, I'm trying to remember specific. We went to A/B scheduling. Like I said, there were 5 things that we did. But all we were really doing was changing the structure of schooling. It was a wonderful, wonderful social experiment in that we changed structures. Well, guess what? Structures and changing structures does not lead to improved student outcomes. Now, we had some good outcomes. We improved discipline, we improved attendance, etc. But fundamentally, what we should have been doing was focusing not only on changing structures such as scheduling, teaming, etc. We also needed to work on teaching, because unless we improve teaching and learning, it doesn't matter how many different structures we put into place, it's not going to have the impact that it needs to really prepare our students so that they can move on to the next level of schooling with all of the skills, knowledge, and attributes that they need to be successful. Okay?
Tracy.
Yes, go right ahead.
What you just talked about there is why I think that it's to me why I think we have so much problems fighting inequity.
Yep.
You just gave a situation where you talked about it's the structures that you have to change. It's not all these other things that you kind of want. It's the structure. So to me, if you look at inequity in terms of the resources, the 50 books, both people having, and all of that, you can kind of address those things. Bill Gates was trying to address those things by pumping in all the money and everything. But to me, inequity is a mindset. Yes. It's a ingrained belief. It's almost to me a culture of itself. And until you open your eyes and see that it's a mindset, that it's a structure, that structure you're talking about, then you can, you can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. Yep, I guess that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And I talked a little bit last week, if you remember too, about when we're thinking about student achievement, it really should be about years of growth as opposed to hitting a specific standard. So for example, you know, if a student comes in, and I'll pick on my school, we did some deep dive data analysis and looked at our ninth graders. And to my horror, I found out that approximately 70% of my ninth graders were only reading on the 5th and 6th grade level. So there was no way that we could just expect them to pick up the biology textbook in ninth grade and be able to read it and understand it. So we had to do a ton of background building. We had to teach reading. We had to teach our science teachers how to teach students to read the science textbook or the science materials, those kind of things. And we made tremendous growth. Now, did we get every single student that year through the end of course biology exam that was required by the state of Texas? No. But if we looked at the growth model, we grew our students more than 3 years. So a 5th grader who was coming in, or excuse me, a 9th grader coming in reading at the 5th grade level, we moved them to the 8th grade reading level, but they didn't pass the end of course exam. So we were dinged for not passing the standard. But under that growth model, making 3 years of growth within a single year is phenomenal for our students. And so, unfortunately, the political climate doesn't always recognize the real growth that's happening with students. So not only did we have to look at this from a structural standpoint, we had to completely rethink the way that we were teaching within our content areas. And it's hard, it's challenging. We eventually got every student to graduate, and we managed to do it within 4 years. But we had to completely blow up the way that we were doing things. So not just changing the schedule, we also had to really, like I said, focus on what were the skill sets that our teachers needed to successfully meet the students where they were and to push them so that by the time they were ready to graduate, they could pass every exit level test that was required. They were reading at or above grade level. They were able to do math at or above grade level. And we had equipped them with the skills they needed to go on to whatever the next step was in their life, whether that was college, career, military, trade school, you name it. We wanted our students to be prepared for those things. And I know a lot of people too, we're kind of, the pendulum is swinging, but there for a while, we all know that we thought every single student should be college bound. We're beginning to recognize that sometimes that career prep is actually just as good, if not better. I know lots of plumbers who make way more money than teachers do. But I also know too, the readability level to pass those plumbing, I don't even know what they're called, but like to be a master level plumber or whatever, you have to take certain tests, you know, et cetera, to get your license. The readability level of those are actually higher, quite frankly, than some of our college textbooks. So we cannot, like Willie said, we cannot have this mindset of our urban students are less than our more affluent students. We have to have those super high expectations for their success and be willing to do whatever it takes to really get them where they need to be. And it is mindset. And it is very much about belief systems and values and all those kind of things. Because without that, we just are not going to get our students what they need. Kind of makes sense, guys, what we're talking about? Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. It's pretty short tonight. So hang on one second. Let me see if I can figure out how to share again. Just so you can see. There we go. Okay. So what do we know works? So it doesn't matter who's done the research. It doesn't matter whether it was done in 1978 or in the year 2020. There are certain things that we know works within our urban schools. And we've talked about some of this. You have to have strong leadership from the principals, from your teachers, from the community, from the businesses, from your students. Everybody has to be marching in the same direction. Now, we can certainly agree to disagree, maybe about how some things are done or what strategies we're going to use or anything like that, but there has to be almost this, I hate to use this word because it's so negative, but almost this cult-like belief in what we're doing. So I know when I got to MacArthur High School, There were teachers.
Tracy,
Yes, go right ahead.
i.e., your mission and your vision.
Exactly. You hit it on the nail head, Willie. Exactly. So when I got to MacArthur High School, out of 200 some teachers, there were some that had been there since the mortar was drying on the bricks, since 1968. I was the third principal when I went there in the year 2000. So this was pretty revolutionary. And to top it off, I was a female. I was the first female principal in the district at the high school level. I was also the first one in my UIL district. Lots of things were kind of shattered when I went there. And I'm a pretty strong person, strong-willed, some would say obstinate. And, I did everything I could think of. I had a great team of leaders that we were all working together to get everybody to buy in to what we were trying to do. But at the end of the day, there were some people who just could not make that shift. They still thought, because MacArthur had been a very affluent high school when it opened in the 60s, mostly white, etc. It had changed dramatically and become a true urban high school. We had students of every race, every socioeconomic level, and things had changed, like I said, very dramatically within the school by the time we got to the year 2000. And I remember standing up in front of the faculty, it was towards the end of the year, and I said, look, you guys have a decision to make. You're either going to keep along this path and we're going to do amazing things for kids, or you can opt out. I will give you a great recommendation so you can go to the school of your choice that is more in line with your belief systems. But it's time to either get on the bus or get out of our way. And that year, out of almost 200 teachers, I had 34 who decided to retire. And, one of the things as a principal, you have all these metrics that you have to meet, and one of them is usually going to be something like staff retention. And I just thought, man, it's my first year. I just got rid of 34 people. What's going to happen? And lo and behold, I got a call from my superintendent. And, I had come from a very large district from Dallas to Irving, which was much smaller. Still a large district. We had 37,000 students in our district, but nothing like the 155,000 we had in Dallas. And so I wasn't accustomed to the superintendent calling a principal. That just didn't happen in Dallas. And I get a call, and it's the superintendent. And I'll never forget what he says to me. He says, Tracy, I'm looking at your personnel reports, and I see that you had 34 retirements and another like 27, 28, I don't remember the exact number, teacher transfers. And he said, basically, you got rid of a fourth of your staff. Of your teaching faculty. And I said, yes, sir, that's true. And he said, I need to talk to you about this. And I said, yes, sir, I expected we might have to have a conversation about this. And he said, congratulations. He said, that's exactly what's needed to happen. Because he said, you had some people so set in their ways, all they were going to do was hold you back. And I will tell you, when you have that kind of support from leadership, it made all the difference in the world. And that is when we began to turn the corner. And we did have amazing results for kids. And like I said, I think I've shared with you guys, we became a National Blue Ribbon School of Excellence, one of the very few truly diverse urban high schools to achieve that. We were named the best high school in the country by the Intel Foundation and by Scholastic and several other huge corporations. And it was simply the fact that I was fortunate enough to have a great team that we built together. And we did crazy things like we included students on our interview panels. And the student had the final say about whether somebody was hired or not. People thought we'd lost our minds. But we shared this vision of nothing less than being the best at everything we did, whether it was athletics, it was math achievement, it was extracurricular. I mean, we were so competitive, it was almost insane. But because we created this mindset in our students. And it was, like I said, it was my teacher leaders who made this happen, that they were the best. They could do anything they chose to do. We had so many D1 scholarships that year. We had students who were presidential scholars in the academics. I mean, we had several students who were perfect scores on the SAT. We had many students who were National Merit Scholars, not just finalists or whatever. But again, it was this crazy vision that the team was able to create. So leadership matters, not just from the principal. It has to be at all levels, including your students. The other things that we know that work, you have to have high expectations. There has to be order, guys. When I got to MacArthur, we were having 2 and 3 fights a day. And so, you know, we just almost instituted martial law to get that under control. And the students didn't like it. They got used to it. They realized it was for the best. And we worked a lot on our climate and our culture to really make sure that we were creating a place where kids love to be, but also too that there wasn't this out of control, crazy discipline problems. You also have to focus on literacy and numeracy. You know, a lot of people think, you know, literacy, okay, well, kids learn to read in the first, grades, 1 through 3. You can't ever stop focusing on reading and literacy and numeracy because those are the building blocks for everything kids do, whether it's in science, social studies, you name it. Those are critically important. There has to be a frequent evaluation of progress. You have to do some remediation. You also need to enrich. Don't forget about your kids who are your gifted and talented. They need to be constantly pushed too. There has to be not only good first instruction, I would say great first instruction, and you also have to use that RTI model. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about this, but there has to be also this attitude and belief that we're going to be proactive in everything that we do, and I will tell you, you have to be willing to take a stand with those bad teachers. It's not popular, but we all know who they are. The teachers know who they are. And I will tell you, you've accomplished this when your teachers start taking care of the other teachers. So let me give you an example. So one day my math department chair came to me and she said, Tracy, she said, do you trust me? I kind of looked at him like, that's a weird question to ask me, but yes, of course I trust you. And she said, you mean that, right? I said, yes, of course I trust you, because I did. She was phenomenal, one of the best teachers I've ever seen in my life. And she's like, okay. She said, just want to know. So she held her math department meeting, and there was a teacher on the team who was not effective. That's putting it mildly. Not liked by the students, didn't get great results. The teachers hated working with her. We all knew it. So the team sat this teacher down and they said, we don't want you on our team anymore because, and they laid it out, you don't pull your weight. You don't help with departmental activities and things like that. Your students are not prepared when they come to the next level of math with us because you haven't adequately taught them. They laid it out. And they told her, they said, it's not anything against you personally, but we have certain expectations of this team and you're not meeting them. And so we are respectfully asking you to either resign, retire, or transfer. And she did. I had been working on trying to document out this teacher for at least 2 years, and we didn't get everything we needed. She actually ended up retiring at the end of the year. My team did that. I didn't do it. They did it. And when you have the belief system that we all have to do our part, now we will coach you and support you and do everything we can to help you. But if you're not willing to come along with us, sometimes you got to get out of the way. So it's really important to have proactive leadership and mindset instead of just reactive. If you've got to move beyond flying by the seat of your pants and really strategically looking at every aspect of the school and what you're doing and keeping what works, making it better, or going a totally different direction. So a lot of people that I really respect have done tons of research around this. I mentioned to you earlier, Ron Edmonds. He and Larry Lazat did the effective school correlates. They've done a ton of research. Pedro Noguera is another one who's really good. The Brookings Institute also has done and brought in some really great researchers about urban ed and what works, as well as the Council of the Great City Schools. So that's just for your information. I'm not saying you have to look any of that up for the purposes of the class, but you know, on down the line, you may face a situation and you're like, you know what, I'm just kind of stuck. These are my go-to people when I'm stuck looking at an issue or a particular need within a school system. So I love this quote, you know, and I really do believe this, that for our inner city youth, the most important factor that determines success is a well-prepared teacher. You know, one of the interview questions I used to always ask when I was interviewing for principals was, in your role as principal, what's the most important thing you can do? And I will tell you, 9 out of 10 applicants told me, I support the students. My job is to be an advocate for the students, be a champion for the students, to support the students. I never hired one of those people to be principals. The principal's job is to support their teachers. Because if you take care of the teachers, they'll take care of your kids. But if you don't take care of your teachers, then they're going to eat the students. And so great teachers, and I told my staff this, I was very open and transparent. I will, if you are getting the results, I will do anything I possibly can to make your job easier and to support you. If you're not taking care of the students and you're not getting results, this is not the school for you. Because at the end of the day, we are determining not only what a student's life is going to be like, we're also determining that for generations to come. Because when you come from poverty, guys, it's oftentimes, if not almost always, generational. And our job as educators is to stop that cycle of poverty. And it is a calling, it is a mission. Not everybody's cut out for this work, you know, and there may be some great teachers out there who are going to do great in, you know, the Highland Parks, you know, the River Oaks areas. You know, I'm trying to think what are some of the other really affluent areas. You know, clearly I can only think of Texas right now. You know, if you live in Key West, you know, you're pretty affluent. But those of us that are called to this kind of work, we have to change that dynamic for generations. So it is a mission, it is a calling, and I'm sorry, I'm unapologetic about holding people to standards and high expectations because our children's lives literally depend on it. So I'll get off my soapbox, sorry. You can talk a little bit strongly about all this stuff. What questions, comments, or concerns do you guys have tonight before we end our meeting?
Hi, I just wanted to share that my school just started our SGOs for this year, and my principal's goal for this year is for teachers to collaborate more for more student improvement. And I just thought that was really cool that that's our goal after we've been talking about it in class. So I just wanted to share.
That's awesome, Nicole. Yes, I'm telling you guys, this work is too hard. Nobody can do it by themselves. You know, we can't all be the savior. We have to invite people into collaboration. And, you know, I've been just blown out of the water, quite frankly, by some of the things that my teams over the years have come up with. And I did the same thing with my principals, you know. I'm like, you're the leader of your school, but you guys need to all work together as principals. We're all in the same community. We're serving the same population. And what works at school A may be awesome at school B too. So we got to collaborate and share. So I'm really excited for you, Nicole. That makes my heart feel good. Anybody else want to chime in before we end? I'm trying to see if there was anything else. Yeah, and Angela, I think you made a great point. She talks about too that the social aspect of all of this has to change. It does, guys. It begins with relationships and it ends with relationships. I cannot tell you how many tears I shed standing on that stage at graduation, shaking kids' hands who I never thought would make it. And they didn't think they would make it. And we were both crying and hugging and, you know, and celebrating with families this amazing achievement. It is all worth it, guys, but it's all about really believing in yourself, your team, and your kids. Okay, guys, we are 2 minutes over. Sorry about that. So we have our last Zoom meeting next week. If you guys have questions or concerns about anything, you know how to find me. Text or email is usually going to be your best bet. Okay, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and end for everybody. Thank y'all. Y'all have a great weekend, and next week we'll see you one more time. Bye.